Some ghost stories were written once by one person and stayed that way. These aren't those. These are the ones that got passed around so many times, babysitter to babysitter, campfire to campfire, town to town, that nobody remembers who told them first. And there's usually a reason a story survives that long. 6 of the most well-known urban legends in the English-speaking world. Stay for the last one. It's the one that made an entire generation of babysitters check the upstairs closet before sitting down. Almost everyone in North America grew up hearing some version of this one. The ritual is nearly always the same. Stand in a dark bathroom, alone, in front of a mirror. Light a single candle, or none at all. Say the name Bloody Mary, usually 3 times, sometimes as many as 13, depending on who's telling it. And she's said to appear behind you in the glass. The stories about what happens next vary wildly. In some versions, she simply screams. In others, she reaches through the mirror. In the darkest versions, whoever performs the ritual disappears entirely, and their reflection stays behind, visible in the mirror for years afterward, unable to leave. Where the name comes from is its own mystery. Some trace it to Mary I of England, blamed, likely unfairly, for the deaths of Protestants during her reign. Others link it to older European folklore about mirror scrying, the practice of using reflective surfaces to see the future or communicate with the dead, which dates back centuries before America even existed. What's interesting isn't whether Bloody Mary is real. It's that this ritual has been performed by children in the dark on purpose for generations, which says something about how much people enjoy scaring themselves on command. A teenage couple parks on a quiet, remote road late at night, a classic setting that shows up in dozens of versions of this story across different states and decades. A radio news bulletin interrupts the moment. A dangerous man has escaped from a nearby psychiatric facility, easily identified by a hook where his left hand used to be. The girl gets nervous and asks to leave. The boy, annoyed, agrees, peeling out of the parking spot a little too aggressively. When they get home, he walks around to open her door for her and finds a bloody hook hanging from the door handle, torn clean off at the wrist. The story has circulated in American folklore since at least the 1950s, and some folklorists trace elements of it back even further to older cautionary tales warned to teenagers about the dangers of parking in isolated places at night. It's one of the most studied urban legends in American folklore precisely because of that function. It's less a ghost story and more a story parents and communities use to warn teenagers, wrapped in something scary enough to actually be repeated. On the outskirts of Chicago, along a road near an old cemetery, drivers have reported picking up a young hitchhiking woman since at least the 1930s. She's usually described the same way across accounts. Blonde, wearing a white party dress, cold to the touch. She asks to be dropped off near the cemetery gates, and as the car passes the entrance, she vanishes from the seat, sometimes passing straight through the closed gates themselves. Some versions of the legend claim she was a young woman who died in a car accident after leaving a dance at a nearby ballroom in the 1930s, still wearing the white dress she'd worn that night. What makes this one stand out among vanishing hitchhiker stories, a type of legend found in nearly every culture worldwide, is the sheer number of independent reports tied to one specific stretch of road, spanning multiple decades, from people who had no contact with each other and, in several cases, no prior knowledge of the legend at all. Across Mexico, the American Southwest, and much of Latin America, parents have told children about a woman known as the Weeping Woman for centuries. The core of the story, a woman, in grief or rage after losing her own children near a river, drowned them herself in most versions of the tale. Cursed to wander the water's edge forever, searching for children to take in their place, her wail can be heard along river banks and canals at night, a long, mournful cry that's said to grow louder the closer she gets to you. Regional variations differ on almost every detail: her name, the exact river, whether she drowned her children by accident or by choice. But the warning at the center stays consistent across nearly all of them. Don't be near water alone at night. and if you hear crying with no one visible nearby, get inside immediately. It remains one of the most widely told ghost stories in the Spanish-speaking world, still used by parents today for the same reason it likely started, keeping children away from dangerous water at night. Unlike the others on this list, this legend is comparatively recent. Most accounts trace back to a single reported encounter from a Texas journalist in the mid-1990s, which then spread rapidly online through the early 2000s. The pattern across reported sightings is unusually consistent. One or two children, usually appearing somewhere between the ages of 8 and 14, appear at a door, car window, or isolated location after dark. They ask politely to be let in or given a ride, often citing a mundane excuse like needing to use a phone. The detail that appears in nearly every account: their eyes are described as entirely black, with no visible white or iris. People who claim to have encountered them almost universally report the same overwhelming reaction, an intense, instinctive wave of dread that makes them refuse the request, even before consciously registering the eyes. Several accounts describe a strange, specific detail. The children can't seem to enter unless invited, no matter how simple that invitation would be to give. Whether or not you find this one convincing, it's a useful case study in how a modern urban legend spreads. One online post in the late 90s, and within a decade it had become one of the most widely recognized ghost stories on the internet. A babysitter is watching two children late at night. The phone rings. A man's voice, calm and quiet, asks a single question. "Have you checked on the children?" She assumes it's a prank and hangs up. He calls again. Same question. After several calls, unsettled, she checks the children's room, both sleeping soundly. The calls keep coming, each one slightly more unnerving than the last, until she finally calls the police out of fear. They tell her to keep him on the line as long as possible so they can trace it. The trace comes back. The call is coming from an extension inside the house, upstairs. This story, sometimes called The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, is considered one of the foundational urban legends of American horror, and variations of it have circulated since at least the 1960s, always ending the same way. The caller was in the house the entire time. It's stuck around for over 60 years for one simple reason. Of everything on this list, it's the only story built entirely around a fear that doesn't require a ghost, a curse, or anything supernatural at all. Just a phone, an empty house, and someone already inside it. 6 stories, some centuries old, one barely older than the internet, all still being told, all still working. If you grew up hearing a different version of any of these, a different name, a different ending, put it in the comments. Some of the best details in these legends only survive because someone's grandmother told it slightly differently. Subscribe for more of these. There's no shortage of stories left.